From New Delhi, you're watching DD India, India's voice to the world. I am Ramesh Ramachandran. Coming up in the next hour, India's Foreign Minister Subramaniam Jaishankar tells the DD India conclave that India's G20 presidency is critical for bridging North-South divide. G20 Sherpas hold talks to forge a consensus ahead of the summit. India's Sherpa Amitabh Kant says officials are trying to bridge the differences on Russia-Ukraine conflict.
We've driven the issues of developing countries and emerging markets first. Now, at the last minute, we are now sorting out the Russia-Ukraine issue. We are very hopeful that we'll sort them out.
After talks with his Turkish counterpart, President Vladimir Putin of Russia says grain deal can be revived if Moscow's conditions are met. Gabon coup leader General Brice Nguema, sworn in as a transitional president, says the country's citizens should have the opportunity to adopt a new constitution by referendum. And India in a commanding position after dismissing Nepal for 230 runs in an Asia Cup encounter in Sri Lanka. And now to the build-up for the G20 summit being held here in New Delhi. India's External Affairs Minister Subramaniam Jaishankar addressed a conference organized by your channel DD India in New Delhi on Monday in the run-up to this week's G20 summit. Minister Jaishankar said India's G20 presidency is giving a voice to the global south.
Why is our presidency of the G20 important? The first reason is the environment. That the world environment today is very difficult. You have a very sharp east-west polarization. You have very big north-south divides, gaps. The second is within this larger universe of problems. What are the priorities? And we have focused on the priorities using the concept of Global South. And finally, what has been different the way we have done it. And I think a lot of it derives from Prime Minister Modi's belief in Jan Bhagidari.
Minister Jaishankar said India's achievements over the last decade have generated a lot of curiosity around the world.
There is an enormous curiosity in the world today, and I would say a growing respect in the world today about what it is that India has managed to do in the last decade. So when we tell people, and our numbers by any standards are mind-boggling. When you tell people, look, don't worry, during that period, we actually, despite all those apocalyptic predictions about us, we actually kept up food support for such a large number, 800 million people.
The minister made a specific reference to India's digital transformation while speaking about the country's achievements.
Probably if I were to single out one particular aspect of what we are doing, it is the digital. That our digital delivery, I think, is evoking a lot of respect. I mean, when you talk to people about cashless transactions, I mean, we are today 40 times the number of the US in terms of what we do.
Minister Jaishankar also spoke about the importance of millets. He said India's campaign of pushing for the cultivation and consumption of millets has opened up a large untapped possibility of boosting the production of the grains.
The millet campaign. What you will see is that if you are going to increase grain production, here is a large untapped possibility. And when you travel around the world, I mean, for example, I've seen in Africa, a lot of African countries actually have grown up eating millets, by the way, just like we did. In our own lives, younger people would be surprised to know, wheat really came in a big way in 1960s and 70s.
It's official. President Xi Jinping of China will skip the G20 summit in New Delhi. The Chinese Foreign Ministry did not say why Xi will not attend, but did say that Prime Minister Li Qiang would lead the Chinese delegation instead. And President Joe Biden of the US says he is disappointed that his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping will skip the G20 summit in New Delhi this week. Xi's absence from the summit comes at a time when the US-China relations are worsening. Biden is set to land in India for a 3-day visit from Thursday.
Not publicly. I am disappointed, but I'm going to get to see him. Thank you.
The G20 Sherpas are holding talks in a New Delhi suburb. The 4-day event gathers the personal emissaries of G20 leaders. It will finalize the agenda of the summit. Delegates from the G20 member states and other countries invited to the summit are taking part in it. India, under its G20 presidency, has been able to make progress on building a consensus amongst member nations on a variety of issues. India's G20 Sherpa Amitabh Kant spoke to DD India's Jessica Taneja about the negotiations underway at the 4th Sherpas meeting in Haryana's Nuh.
We're in Nuh, where the 4th round of the Sherpa talks are underway, and we're here with the Indian Sherpa Amitabh Kant. Thank you, sir, for taking our time and speaking to us. The negotiations are underway. What can you tell us about them so far?
Very tough negotiations are on. We started 8 in the morning. They go on till next day in the morning till about 7 o'clock, non-stop. Every word is fought for. They're very serious issues. Right now we are caught up in climate and the issue of geopolitics. All the other issues we have cleared up. So we are hopeful that in the next 2 days we'll be able to sort them out.
Right, and India has kept its agenda firm so far, giving voice to the Global South. We've taken over from Indonesia, another voice from the Global South. Now it moves on to Brazil. How important does it get for the region, especially India, when it tries to position itself in that particular manner?
Very important. Throughout our presidency, we've acted like the voice of the Global South. Our statement will be the first statement which will speak the voice of the developing countries. Our statement will be a statement which will be very bringing out all the highlights which are important, all the key issues of sustainable development goals, of reform of the institutions, of greater financing, of climate action. How do you transform lives of citizens? How do you leave no one behind in the Global South? That's what the Prime Minister wanted. We are going to greatly deliver on that.
Since G20 forum is considered to be deliberating on economic policies primarily. It started with the finance ministers meeting when it did back in the day. Now it's come to that. How much does geopolitics really weigh in here when you're trying to come up with a draft resolution?
Big way now, because it is having an impact on economic issues. It is having an impact on food.
What kind, if you would tell us?
Fuel, fertilizer, there's lack of gas in Europe, etc. The cost of production has gone up. So for them it's an important issue. But we are not the cause of Ukraine war. We have not caused it. For us, the development issues of the Global South were more important. So we've brought all those issues center stage. We've driven the issues of developing countries and emerging markets first. Now, at the last minute, we are now sorting out the Russia-Ukraine issue. We are very hopeful that we'll sort them out.
So we'll have a consensus and it will be India's year.
We will do our best.
All right. Thank you for speaking to us. As you heard the Indian Sherpa Amitabh Kant give us details that there have been numerous challenges, but as he says, geopolitics might be at play, but at the heart of this forum is how to come up with economic reforms and what India can offer as the voice of the Global South. This is Jessica Taneja with video journalist Ajit for DD India.
And Jessica Taneja now joins me live from the venue of the G20 Sherpas meeting. Jessica, what can you tell us about the deliberations which the G20 Sherpas are holding now just days ahead of the summit? Are they still trying to forge a consensus on issues such as Ukraine, reform of multilateral institutions, and reducing the debt burden of stressed countries?
That's right, Ramesh. And as you heard, the Indian Sherpa Amitabh Kant also talk about how the Ukraine war is not something that India caused, but yes, it does weigh in. At the same time, he says the focus for India has been on giving voice to the global south, and as you also pointed out, talking about emerging nations and the needs, especially the tech needs of the emerging nations, the kind of substantial learning that India can offer, especially when it comes to expanding its digital infrastructure, something India has been thriving in so far. And a lot of emerging countries are taking interest in that particular aspect of what India has to offer. It has been a tough day for negotiations. It's just the day two. There are 2 more days to go. Today it was about 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. In the previous meets, as you would recall, it was 2 a.m. to 2 p.m., 2 p.m. to 2 a.m. Certainly a tough day for all the Sherpas who joined here. And moving ahead, they will draft the joint communique, and that is something we'll have to wait for till the 7th of September. That again gets presented next weekend in New Delhi.
Indeed, and what sort of an effort is being made to ensure that the leaders issue a joint communique towards the end of the summit over the coming weekend?
Well, certainly a lot of efforts. In fact, we're not very far away from where the deliberations and discussions are ongoing. Right now, the delegation is on a half-an-hour break, but the meetings have been continuous since morning. And what we've picked up so far, even as the Indian Sherpa had pointed out to us, the focus has been on economic policies and reforms, especially. There are a lot of divergent issues. As you see, we're talking about energy and food security and also fertilizers. So, of course, a lot needs to be talked about. India also keeping a focus on resilient global chains as well. That has been one of the focuses, and that perhaps is also part of the negotiations. But the joint communique is expected once everybody gives in their inputs and there's a final word on what exactly then goes ahead in the New Delhi declaration, Ramesh.
All right, Jessica, thank you. That was Jessica Taneja reporting live from the venue of the G20 Sherpas meeting. And still to come on DD India News Hour, a deep dive into the G20 summit as Sherpas continue their talks to firm up the summit agenda. A Hindu temple is coming up in Indonesia's capital, Jakarta. And the Indian Air Force begins a training exercise along the boundaries of China and Pakistan.
Welcome to Delhi. Narrator of umpteen tales. Creator of historic folklore. To the Delhi of today that is proud of its past. To the Delhi of tomorrow that's charting a glorious future. To lanes, to foods, to ever-changing city moods. To walls, to historic gates, and everything in between. To art, to theatre, and an ode to the inner creator. To bhavans, to path, to melting pot of cultures, to a kaleidoscope of celebrations, to ghazals, to guftagus, to green spaces, to shrines, to deities, to devotion, to hope, to the city that is the heart of India. To the India that the world knows by its philosophy of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam as we unite under.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I am Ramesh Ramachandran. Now, going back to the top story, the G20 Sherpas are holding talks to firm up the agenda of the summit. G20 is happening this weekend on the 9th and 10th of September. And joining me to talk more about the G20 is former Indian Ambassador, Mr. Prabhu Dayal. Ambassador Dayal, welcome to DD India News Hour. I don't know whether you listened to India's G20 Sherpa Amitabh Kant's interview to DD India just a short while ago. But if I were to ask you, how hopeful are you of an outcome document from the summit, be it a joint statement, a joint communique, or a chair summary?
Well, Ramesh, thanks for having me on your show.
Welcome.
I'm an optimist, and therefore I think that some kind of a statement should always be possible. Now, there are differences, and these differences do cloud the G20 summit, which will be taking place. The Russia-Ukraine war is casting one very big shadow. It has divided the G20. Moreover, it has had ramifications of a wide variety. For instance, it has worsened the global energy crisis, the global food crisis. It has also impacted global efforts in regard to supply chains. So a lot of thinking will be taking place and efforts will be made to put into place some suggestions. This is indeed what India wants. India wants the G20 summit to have a positive outcome. And therefore, I'm sure that we will do our best to make sure that the outcome of the meeting is concretized in such a way that it is actionable. Of course, there are impediments, as I said, and I hope that these can be set aside and a positive outcome emerges.
Ambassador Dayal, India sees itself as the voice of the global South. We've heard in the narrative, in the build-up to the summit over the last many weeks and months now, about a so-called North-South divide. In that context, if we look at the world around us as we speak, how hopeful are you of India being able to play a bridging role to bridge the gaps, as it were, on the global South issue, or the North-South divide, or even the West versus Russia issue?
Well, there are very serious impediments. The West versus Russia issue doesn't seem to be going away. You would recall that at the Bali summit, India played a very important role in working out a joint statement or joint communique. But things have worsened since then. The positions of the two sides have hardened, and for this reason, it may be difficult to work out a joint communique this time. There are impediments, as I'm pointing out. Then as regards the interests of the global South, the very motto which India has chosen for the G20 summit is Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. And we have been trying to emphasize to all the other participants that we believe in one world, one future. And it is something that is appealing. This theme is going down well with a number of participants, but not all. China, I may submit, doesn't really look at the global South in a manner which is akin to the way we look at it. China sees the global South as an area where it has to expand its economic influence. China's intentions always remain suspect. It is promoting its own policies, and these policies are designed towards increasing China's own economic power. So there may be impediments which will come in the way of our serving the interests of the global South, but I am sure that we will do our level best to emphasize that the global South has been impacted very, very adversely by the ongoing Russia-Ukraine crisis, by Chinese expansionism in the Indian Ocean region, and by a whole host of factors, including, of course, the COVID pandemic, which not only impacted the global South, but the rest of the world.
Indeed.
So all these have to be factored in, and we have to devise a strategy towards alleviating the problems of the global south and, of course, bringing the rest of the world to work closer again.
In conclusion, Ambassador Dayal, I have a twofold question. Since you refer to China, would you characterize Xi Jinping's absence as a mark or sign of arrogance or indifference or both? Number one. Number two, would you say that the bilaterals on the margins of the summit would be equally important from an Indian perspective?
To answer your second question first, yes, of course. The bilaterals on the sidelines of the G20 summit will be very important, as indeed bilaterals always are. Secondly, to come to the question of China and Xi Jinping not attending, we all know that he likes to attend conferences where he dominates. Unfortunately for him, at the G20 summit, he will not be able to do so. He will not be able to promote China's hidden agenda in the manner he likes to. Of course, we know that China is also facing serious economic problems. The housing-related issues are not going away. Then there are issues which relate to China's equation with the United States. I don't think that Xi Jinping wants to meet President Biden, except at a time and place of his own choosing. And then, not to forget, China has created new hostilities. It has created new tensions with India by releasing the Arunachal map. And I think that China will not be comfortable at all attending a G20 summit. So for a whole host of reasons, China has decided to keep away because this is what suits Xi Jinping.
Right.
And the intentions of China are known to everybody.
All right, we leave it at that. Ambassador Dayal, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your insights with our viewers at home and abroad. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it. And you can stay tuned to DD India for a comprehensive coverage of the summit on the 9th and 10th of September. Moving on, kebabs and curries sounds tempting, no? And why not? The spicy Indian foods are gaining popularity across the world, including in Indonesia. The Southeast Asian country shares a historical connection with India. DD India's Vishal Baristo reports from Jakarta.
This restaurant in Jakarta has a very peculiar Indian connection. This door is from the Pink City, Jaipur in India. It is quite exotic in nature, and this restaurant serves Indian food. And many Indonesians come here to enjoy Indian cuisine. Now this table is full of Indian dishes. They have samosa, they have dahi puri, and they have chicken biryani also. This is so very famous in India, but in Jakarta, it's definitely quite a treat. I have some Indonesians here. Let's talk to them and find out. What's your name?
Hikmah.
Hikmah, what are you having and what makes you come here?
I like chicken tikka. This is chicken tikka because I like the taste of Indian food. Like similar with Indonesia. That samosa, this is similar with Indonesian food, so that's why I come here.
So what is so special about Indian food?
I like biryani.
You like biryani?
Yes, I like biryani. Saya suka dahi puri and mango lassi, very good.
So I actually like the chili chicken because it's new. It's a new taste. So I love trying new cuisine. So I like Indian food also because it's similar. It has lots of herbs.
The owner of this restaurant is
Namaste Ganesha. Ek Sanskriti is the name of my restaurant. I'm Shilpa Dave. I have been very blessed that they really have started accepting the Indian food, Indian cuisine, and we follow the authentic recipe.
What is so special about Indian food?
I think this food suitable with Indonesian tongue.
So there you see these people, they are all from Indonesia, but they have a connect with India, as I've already told you, with cameraman Sanjay Jaina in Jakarta. This is Vishal Baristo with DD India.
Now the next story is one that gives hope to the world. The Indonesian government has given a piece of land in Jakarta for a Hindu temple. The temple is under construction. It is being funded by the Indian diaspora in Indonesia. Vishal Baristo has more.
I'm in Jakarta, Indonesia, and this is going to be the biggest Hindu temple in our country, which follows largely Islamic religion. And there you can see the work is in full swing, and the beauty of this place is that the land has been provided by the Indonesian government, and the total area is 4,000 square meters. I have with me a section of the Indian diaspora.
We don't have any temple. So all the praying, all prayers thing sometimes postponed and sometimes is cancelled. Taking this situation, we are just discussing with our friend and try to do something. Then we do the communication by using our connection. We communicate with the local government. I mean the governor, Jakarta area governor. At the time the governor is supporting us.
What is your reaction?
This feel is just fantastic. You know, I'm proud of this temple because this is one bigger temple in here. More people may be proud of this temple.
How did you decide the design of the temple?
Yeah, we decide the temple. We want to make the different one in Indonesia, not same with India, and the unique one for the tourism. All tourists will come here like that.
Yes, I'm very excited because it's a big temple, and if we have a many occasion, we can pray there, and I'm so excited.
To cover all the Hindu community to come and to make them not feel this is just Murugan Temple, Durga Temple. That's why we're choosing the name is Sri Sanatana Dharma Temple.
So there you hear these also very proud people. They, by their own efforts and thanks to the Indonesian government and thanks to their friendly relations with India, now finally they are going to have the biggest temple in Indonesia. With cameraman Sanjay Jaina in Jakarta, this is Vishal Baristo for TT India.
The Indian Ministries of Education, Skill Development and Entrepreneurship, along with Meta, have introduced an initiative to promote entrepreneurship in future generations. An agreement was signed between Meta and Indian education agencies in New Delhi on Monday in the presence of India's Education Minister, Dharmendra Pradhan.
ट्वेंटी-फर्स्ट सेंचुरी की जो स्किल्स की आवश्यकता है हमारे देश में केवल नहीं दुनिया की जो स्किल रिक्वायरमेंट है उस हिसाब से भारत की अमृत पीढ़ी को तैयार करना यह भारत सरकार की प्राथमिकता में है। इसीलिए आज टेक्नोलॉजी कंपनी मेटा के साथ निस्बत जो स्किल डेवलपमेंट डिपार्टमेंट की एक इंस्टीट्यूशन है वो एंटरप्रेन्योरशिप की एक कोर्स लेके टाई अप किया, एमओयू किया। सीबीएसई में जुड़े हुए स्कूल्स के साथ मेटा की एंगेजमेंट बढ़े, स्कूल बच्चों को AR, VR, AI उसकी कैपेसिटी बढ़े, इमर्सिव टेक्नोलॉजी की नॉलेज बढ़े, इसकी एक एमओयू हुई।
The civic body of Central Delhi, the NDMC, has unveiled a park on the theme of G20. New Delhi would be hosting the G20 summit on the 9th and 10th of September. The park on the arterial road called Kautilya Marg features national bird and animal of all the G20 nations. They've been made from waste and scrap metal, including iron and steel. Take a look at some other stories making news around India. Indian President Draupadi Murmu unveiled a 12-foot-high statue of the father of the nation, Mahatma Gandhi, and a Gandhi Garden in New Delhi. President Murmu said efforts should be made to help all citizens, especially the youth and children, to read as much as possible about Gandhi and his ideals. The Indian Air Force has begun the Trishul training exercises along the borders of China and Pakistan. All major fleets of fighter aircraft, including the Rafale, Mirage 2000 and Sukhoi 30, are taking part in it. The exercise will include heavy lift transport planes and choppers such as the Chinook and Apache. The Garud Special Forces are also taking part in the drills. The second edition of the Naval Commanders Conference has begun in New Delhi. The conference is the apex biannual event facilitating interaction between the naval commanders for talks and formulation of policy. And still to come on DD India News Hour. India and the UK resume talks on a free trade agreement. Gabon's military leader sworn in as the transitional head of state. And Typhoon Haikui brings a trail of destruction in Taiwan. This session is about G20 for Sustainable Future.
The 20 largest economies and perhaps the most capable countries in the world. They have therefore a responsibility.
India is not just a voice of the global south, it's also a bridge to the global north.
India's journey tells that for developing countries to move towards a solar-rich future is possible.
The energy sufficiency part is going to come very soon.
This session is about G20 for Sustainable Future.
The 20 largest economies and perhaps the most capable countries in the world. They have therefore a responsibility.
India is not just a voice of the global south, it's also a bridge to the global north.
India's journey tells that for developing countries to move towards a solar-rich future is possible.
The energy sufficiency part is going to come very soon.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I am Ramesh Ramachandran. A quick recap of the headlines. India's Foreign Minister Subramaniam Jaishankar tells the DD India conclave that India's G20 presidency is critical for bridging the North-South divide. G20 Sherpas hold talks to forge a consensus ahead of the summit. India's Sherpa Amitabh Kant says officials are trying to bridge the differences on Russia-Ukraine conflict. And after talks with his Turkish counterpart, President Vladimir Putin of Russia says the grain deal can be revived if Moscow's conditions are met. Another round of trade talks between India and the UK began on Monday as efforts intensify to bring a free trade agreement over the line. Officials are hopeful that the deal will be finalized soon. DD India's Megumi Lim reports from London.
Well, this will be the 13th round of talks between India and the UK. The British government is hoping the deal will help reduce tariffs on key exports such as cars, legal services and whiskey. And India is hoping to increase visa access to the UK for skilled workers in IT and healthcare. The UK is the largest European market for IT services from India, but the possibility of more migration from India to the UK has been a sticky issue throughout negotiations. It is a politically sensitive topic in Britain, where the government has vowed to bring down net migration. Another hurdle that has come up recently is concerns over conflict of interest. Some members of parliament in the UK have called for Prime Minister Rishi Sunak to be more transparent about his family's financial interests in India. Sunak's wife owns shares worth more than $600 million in Indian IT services company Infosys, which could stand to benefit from the FTA. But officials are optimistic that these issues can be resolved on the sidelines of the upcoming G20 summit, which will take place in New Delhi from September 9th. The deal is aimed at doubling bilateral trade between the UK and India by the year 2030. In the year to March, more than $20 billion in goods and services was traded between the two countries. Megumi Lim in London reporting for DD India.
Julia Chapman now joins me from London for more on this story. Julia, what can you tell us about the sticking points in the negotiations?
Well, there certainly still are sticking points. We understand that for the UK, the main priorities out of this trade deal is to get lower tariffs on its whiskey and car exports, as well as to ensure that there is fair competition with international pharmaceutical companies when it comes to intellectual property in India. And from India's perspective, they want lower tariffs on textiles, as well as greater access for visas to the UK for Indian students and workers. Now, we understand that the tariffs are already being dealt with. There has been movement on both sides. That seems to be moving along well, but there are other areas where there have been much more difficult negotiations. And it is thought that the UK's resistance to expand its visa regime for any particular country is one of the main hindrances to a deal being reached. The UK insists that it has already been issuing more visas to Indian citizens to come to this country, but we understand that that isn't quite as much as the Indian government is hoping for. And although that's not likely to be part of the main trade deal, it's thought that there are sideline negotiations going on for a separate agreement to go alongside these trade talks.
Julia, is there a deadline or timeline for these talks? Some reports say that the officials concerned are hopeful that the deal will be finalized soon.
Well, previous officials, previous prime ministers in the UK, we've had a few of them over the past couple of years. One of them set a deadline for last Diwali. A deal for Diwali was the tagline from former Prime Minister Liz Truss. That didn't materialize. She didn't stay in office for very long, and before her, Prime Minister Boris Johnson had been hoping for a deal at some point last year, but that keeps getting pushed back and back. There had been efforts underway to get a deal signed by the G20 summit to allow Rishi Sunak to travel to New Delhi and hail a new era in British-Indian trade. But now we understand from British government sources that that is unlikely to happen. They're kicking the can down the road, and we understand the reason for that is that there is a reluctance here in the UK to secure any kind of incomplete deal. They don't want to kind of have some sort of temporary interim deal with certain agreements in place that may preclude any kind of full comprehensive deal, which is the prize that the UK government is aiming for. This was being put forward as one of the great opportunities of Brexit, allowing the UK to make its own trade deals. This would really boost trade between the two countries, but so far it still remains elusive.
All right, Julia Chapman in London, thank you. Israeli Foreign Minister Eli Cohen met with Bahrain Crown Prince Salman bin Hamad Al Khalifa in Manama on Monday. Now, Cohen is on a trip to officially inaugurate the Israeli embassy residence. The Israeli Foreign Ministry said that he is also promoting trade and investment between the two countries. In 2020, Israel normalized its ties with the UAE and Bahrain under a U.S. brokered pact called the Abraham Accords. Gabon's military leader, General Brice Oligui Nguema, has been sworn in as the transitional president of the coup-hit country. Gabon's junta seized power in a coup last month, ousting longtime President Ali Bongo. The swearing-in of General Nguema took place at the Constitutional Court. The United Nations, African Union and Western nations have all urged the junta to restore democratic rule in the country. But the coup leaders say they will not rush to hold an election. The military takeover of Gabon is the 8th coup in Western and Central Africa in the last 3 years alone. After a month-long shutdown, Niger's military regime has reopened the country's airspace to all flights. The country's airspace was closed by the junta after the 26th July coup. Hundreds of protesters, meanwhile, were seen singing and dancing outside a French military base in Niger's capital, Niamey. It follows a mass protest calling for French troops to leave the country. After the July coup that overthrew the democratic government of Niger, the military junta asked the ambassadors of various nations to leave the country. The Western countries, including France, refused to recognize the military regime, and Niger decided to cut military coordination with the French in particular. Typhoon Haikui dumped torrential rain across Taiwan. before weakening into a severe tropical storm as it heads for southern China. Officials issued alerts on Monday warning of strong winds and large waves around Fujian and Guangdong province and told ships to take precaution. The typhoon is expected to make landfall on Tuesday morning and then weaken further. The typhoon had initially appeared to depart Taiwan but made landfall a second time in southwest Kaohsiung before moving out into the Taiwan Strait. Officials said that more than 100 people suffered injuries because of the typhoon. Take a look now at some more stories that are making news around the world. 4 space travelers have returned home from a 6-month stay on the International Space Station. The SpaceX Crew Dragon capsule carrying space travelers from the US, the UAE and Russia splashed down off the coast of the US state of Florida on Monday. The members of the Crew 6 mission, run jointly by SpaceX and US space agency NASA, spent 6 months conducting vital research on human health and monoclonal antibodies. They also investigated how wave turbulence in space affects fuel in satellites. Innovative artificial intelligence devices are the highlight of an ongoing China International Fair for Trade in Services. The theme for this year is Openness Leads Development, Cooperation Creates a Win-Win Future. Creative AI products and devices are always among the most visited exhibits. Archaeologists from Peru and Japan have found the antiquated remnants of a pre-Hispanic ancestor worship site in northern Peru. According to the research, the site would be one of the largest settlements in the area, having a geographical extension of 24 hectares. The site has revealed burial chambers, human remains and ceramic offerings of an ethnic diversity with an antiquity of between 800 to 1000 years AD. Residents of Johannesburg in South Africa bade their final goodbyes to their dear ones killed in the apartment block fire. 7 victims, including a 2-year-old child, were laid to rest on Sunday after one of the deadliest fires seen in recent history. And still to come on DD India News Hour. Turkish counterpart and President Vladimir Putin of Russia hold talks on grain deal. And rain halts play at Sri Lanka's Kandy in a crucial Asia Cup clash between India and Nepal.
Welcome to Chandigarh.
Jaipur.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I am Ramesh Ramachandran. President Vladimir Putin of Russia held talks with his Turkish counterpart Recep Tayyip Erdogan in the Russian city of Sochi on Monday. Erdogan told reporters after the meeting that Ukraine should soften its negotiating position against Russia in talks over reviving the Black Sea grain export deal. He also said that he believes a solution can be found soon. Erdogan said more grain should be sent to Africa rather than the European countries.
In this context, we prepared a package containing new suggestions in consultation with the United Nations. I think it is possible to get results with this new process. As Turkey, we believe that we will hopefully reach a solution that will meet expectations in a short time. Especially Ukraine needs to soften its approach on the point of being able to take mutual steps with Russia.
Russian President Vladimir Putin restated after meeting Erdogan that Moscow would be ready to return to the Black Sea grain deal once all agreements relevant to the accord are fulfilled. He said that if those commitments were honored, Russia could return to the deal within the nearest days.
But I would like to say that Russia has never rejected peace talks with Ukraine, and we do not reject it now. Mr. President has been raising these issues during our meeting today. I have confirmed it to him.
And Dasha Chernyshova now joins me from Moscow. Dasha, does a deal look likely now after the Erdogan-Putin talks?
Well, certainly Russia has reiterated its position, saying that there has been zero progress on the meeting of the Russian demands, and they have never been addressed. The Russian concerns remain the same. Moscow says there has been zero progress in the implementation of the Russia-UN memorandum, so it doesn't really look likely that Russia will be rejoining the Black Sea grain deal anytime soon. At least we have heard Moscow before saying that it is all the West's fault and it is the Western countries that are responsible for Russia deciding not to extend the Black Sea grain deal. Moreover, the Russian president has said that Moscow was fooled and the corridors that were supposed to be used for the Black Sea grain deal were used to commit terrorist acts on the part of Ukraine. Moreover, Moscow has been also saying that the Ukrainians have also been amassing the weapons close to the infrastructure of the ports. So certainly from the Russian perspective, it is unlikely that this arrangement will be revived soon. But at the same time, there is another arrangement on the table, the Russian proposal to export grain to Turkey at a discounted price for further processing and sending it to the neediest countries. So this is the issue where Moscow hopes to get Ankara's approval and help, and then to work it out to supply the real countries who do really need that, because Moscow has also been stressing that it is the Western countries, the European countries, that have been getting most of the grain instead of the poorest countries of the world.
And what more can you tell us about Russia's position on these negotiations? Does it have some red lines or conditions?
Well, speaking about the negotiations with Ukraine, Moscow has always been saying that it never walks out of those talks, but definitely Moscow wants to see Ukraine taking into account the new realities on the ground, meaning by that the very fact that Russia considers as its own 4 new territories, Zaporizhia region, as well as Kherson region, as well as Lugansk People's Republic and Donetsk People's Republic, where Russia has held a referendum now, where Moscow is holding the elections to see what regional and local lawmakers will be elected. So certainly this is what Russia wants to see. At the same time, Moscow has also been maintaining that Crimea is a part of Russia, but the same fact that there has been another referendum that Moscow conducted several years ago. So these are the facts on the ground that Moscow wants to see admitted by Ukraine, but also Moscow has been saying very clearly that Moscow needs to see some guarantees by Ukraine that it will have the neutral status. Again, Moscow Moscow has said it has never walked out of the negotiations with Ukraine. And indeed, once again, we have heard the Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan suggesting his mediation efforts in bringing Kyiv and Moscow back to the negotiating table.
Dasha, thank you. The UN's nuclear watchdog, the IAEA, said on Monday that no progress has been made in talks with Iran on its nuclear ambitions. It had hoped to persuade Tehran to reinstall surveillance cameras and look into uranium traces found at undeclared sites. Iran's stockpile of uranium is enriched up to 60%, which is close to weapons grade and continues to grow according to a confidential report from one of the member states of the IAEA. Israel's chief military legal officer has warned against steps that would compromise court independence in what appears to be the clearest public criticism yet by top brass of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's judicial overhaul plan. In a speech at a conference of Israel's Bar Association in Tel Aviv on Monday, the military advocate general cautioned against Israel being stripped of one of its main defenses on international legal issues. The military advocate general's corps is tasked with upholding the rule of law within army ranks and includes an international law department that advises the military on laws of armed conflict. Netanyahu's nationalist religious coalition launched a campaign in January to overhaul the country's justice system, stirring concern for Israel's democratic health and sparking unprecedented protests that have seeped into the military. On to Asia Cup clash between India and Nepal in Sri Lanka's Pallekele. Rain has halted the crucial must-win match for both the teams. India's score read at 17 runs for no loss in 3.1 overs, with Rohit Sharma and Shubman Gill standing unbeaten at the crease in their chase of 231 runs. Earlier, 3-wicket hauls from Mohammad Siraj and Ravindra Jadeja helped Team India to bundle out Nepal for 230. Coming off their thrashing at the hands of Pakistan, Nepal were off to a good start but could not accelerate in the manner they would have liked to in the middle overs and towards the end. If the match ends in no result, then India will qualify for the Super Tour stage. Yelena Ostapenko has stunned world number 1 Iga Swiatek as a US Open title defense ends in heartbreak. Novak Djokovic, Frances Tiafoe, Taylor Fritz and Ben Shelton reach New York quarterfinals.
Novak Djokovic beat Croatian qualifier Borna Gojo 6-2, 7-5, 6-4 in the fourth round of the US Open, winning his 85th career win at the last Grand Slam tournament of the year. Taylor Fritz has reached the quarterfinals, beating Swiss qualifier Dominic Streaker 7-6, 6-4, 6-5. The number 9 seed has won his first ever US Open quarterfinal spot. American Frances Tiafoe won against Australian wildcard Rinky Hijikata 6-4, 6-1, 6-4 to set a quarterfinal clash against Ben Shelton. Coco Gauff beat Caroline Wozniacki 6-3, 3-6, 6-1 for the quarterfinal spot. Coco Gauff is the first American teen since Serena Williams to reach the US Open quarterfinal 2 years in a row. Jelena Ostapenko continued her mastery over world number 1 Iga Swiatek with a 3-set win to reach her first US Open quarterfinals 3-6, 6-3, 6-1.
In the last game of Premier League on Monday, Arsenal beat Manchester United 3-1. Martin Odegaard equalised for Arsenal in the first half after Marcus Rashford's opener for United. Gabriel Jesus and Declan Rice scored in stoppage time to win the game. On the eve of Teachers' Day, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi interacted with the winners of National Teachers Award 2023 at his residence on Monday. 75 award winners took part in the interaction. The Prime Minister appreciated the efforts of teachers in nurturing the young minds of the country. He highlighted the importance of good teachers and the role they can play in shaping the destiny of the country. He stressed the importance of inspiring children by educating them about the success of grassroots achievers. And that's all for this edition of DD India News Hour. But let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, X, formerly Twitter, and Instagram. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran. From all of us here in New Delhi, thanks for watching DD India News Hour.